Good morning, folks. Welcome to our fifth Leap Sports Community Yoga video update with me again, Graham from Gathering Energy Yoga. We are coming up to our sixth Sunday class, so we're starting to come towards the end of our well-being February and March. So I hope you're really enjoying the classes and the videos. This week I thought I would share Yin Yoga with you. So in the kind of lifespan of yoga, Yin Yoga is a relatively new player to the field, I guess you could say. It takes yoga from the Hindu practice or from India, and it also takes the traditional Chinese medicine from China, and it intertwines both of these into a pretty much seated practice where you will sit in a posture or pose anywhere from 2 to 3 minutes up to 5 to 7 minutes. So when somebody looks at somebody doing yin yoga, it looks like nobody's doing very much at all, but it's working a different part of the body or the anatomy. So in a vinyasa, whether that's slow flow vinyasa or vinyasa practice, ashtanga, rocket, all the different names for yoga practices, they're very much a yang energy. So they're working to build heat in the body through the skin, the blood, and the muscles. And that's what then helps the muscles to grow stronger. The Yin yoga is working on your yin tissue, which is your bones, your ligaments, your joints, your tendons, and maybe a substance probably isn't the right word, but your fascia or your fascial network. So your fascial network is like an elastic web that connects everything. It's built into everything. It starts into the individual kind of lines of muscle. It then wraps the overall muscle. It wraps all of your organs. It connects to everything in the body, but it also creates space in the body. So everything's kind of in this fascial sac, which sounds disgusting, I know. But in British medicine, we didn't find out about fascia until 200 or 300 years ago, or 200 years ago, I should say, which is relatively new in the field of what we can find in the human body. Whereas traditional Chinese medicine knew about this network thousands of years ago. They just kind of did. So Yin Yoga works to strengthen bones, ligaments, joints, tendons, and fascia by adding small amounts of stress or pressure to these areas for longer periods of time than they would in a normal Yang practice. Okay, so that's the kind of science bit, but really it's a really nice practice to do, especially in the evening, or if you do lots of other physical sports. So if you're really physical, yin is now used by athletes as a way to bring strength to some of the parts of the body that aren't worked at the same time as you do a yang or high energy practice. So all you'll need for today is a couple of cushions and either a blanket or a towel, and that's it. And in your body, you don't even need a yoga mat. You can do this on the floor. You can even do these postures in bed if you want to bring it towards a restorative style practice. Yin itself isn't restorative. It's a cold active yoga practice, which sounds strange, but that's kind of what it is. And there's three principles to yin, which I'll tell you about as we come into the first posture. So we're going to come towards caterpillar, which might feel like a seated forward fold for most people, but we're going to make it a little nicer for the body. So if you struggle, if you've been to a few of my classes, you'll know this kind of trick. But if you struggle to sit up in a straight back position here, or even fold forward, your natural position is you want to lean back. Your body just won't allow you to sit up. Roll up your towel or blanket, make it into a little kind of ledge, pop it behind your bottom, lift up, sit onto it, and then just come come towards the edge as if you're going to fall off. And what that does is, instead of you leaning back, it starts to tilt the hips forwards, taking us into a kind of flexion of the spine. Legs can be a little bit apart. There can be a bit of space between legs. If you're really tight through the back of the knees, take your first cushion or pillow. You can even roll it up a little and pop that under your knees, giving your knees some kind of well-deserved rest while we're here. The other cushion can be taken into the body and you're going to kind of hug it, so it gives you more support. And we're going to start to come forwards into what feels like a forward fold, but we're going to completely, or try to as much as possible, relax into the legs. So you can wiggle the toes or tense the feet and the muscles in the legs and then let them go, let it kind of just drop down. Hands can hug, chin can come towards the pillow or the chest. No particular breathing style here. Yin is sometimes known as a meditative practice because we're sitting in silence with ourselves. So put on some nice music if you would like to. If you're doing this in bed, it can be nice to do just before you go to bed as well. It just slows the body down. And we allow the shoulders to round. And by rounding, it just means the spine or the head comes towards the chest or the pillow. Arms can stay hugging, or they can reach down the legs. But we're coming to a really passive position. If it feels safe to do so, closing your eyes. Allow your breath to just be. You can breathe in and out through the mouth or the nose. And just notice, or start to notice, where you're maybe holding on to some tension. And that might feel like trying to keep your body in a particular position, but really we just want to allow the weight of our body to kind of stack on top of itself. We don't want to use any muscle strength to hold us in place any more than is needed. And with the eyes maybe closed, it sometimes feels like we sink a little lower with every breath. And I'll only talk a little from time to time within the poses or postures themselves. And I'll explain the 3 principles of Yin. The first principle of Yin is appropriate depth. So because Yin is trying to introduce a little bit of stress into the body, we're trying to find a position where we feel like we're doing something, but it's not so intense that we can't sit still with it for an amount of time. So appropriate depth is about feeling something, but it's not so intense that we can't be here with that feeling. So for caterpillar, it might be pulling through the underside of the legs, the back of the knee, or round towards your glutes. You might be feeling a compression somewhere in the body, around the hips, into the belly or the chest. The weight of the head might be pulling on the back of the neck, rounding through the shoulders and the spine. Or maybe it all feels really nice. So just being aware of how this feels for you. It's different for everyone. Your breath is often your companion in any yoga practice. But particularly in Yin, it can allow you to just take your mind inwards, away from what's happening around you, and inwards towards the feelings within the body, the subtle ebb and flow of the breath. And then that's it. We've been here for 3 minutes. So because you're doing this at home, you can pause the video and you can stay here for longer if that's what you want. I wouldn't stay any longer than maybe 5 to 7 minutes, especially if it's your first time. But for those of you joining me and coming out of the pose, we're going to start to lengthen back out through the spine. So we take the weight back towards the sitting bones or our bum. We can move the cushions out of the way, the knees can stay bent, and we can come off if you're sitting on a towel or a block, anything underneath the bum. Keep the knees bent, lean back into the hands. We always do a counter pose in Yin, so for every posture that we hold, we do a counter pose for about 30 seconds to a minute. So for this one, it's going to be windshield wipers, letting the knees fall side to side. And just letting them just gently move side to side. We're also going to do a kind of upward tabletop. So maybe the fingers point out side to side. For me, they're going to face just in a little bit. Push down into the feet, and we're going to inhale and just lift the bum off the floor. Exhale to come down. Inhale to lift. Exhale to come down. One more. Inhale to lift. Exhale to come down. Okay, I'm going to shimmy myself just a bit further down the mat. This time we're going to come into a lying position down on our backs, but before we do that, we're going to use our blanket or towel again. And what you want to do is try and create a little bit of a kind of sausage or rolled up shape. I wouldn't have it any thicker than this, so that's at least kind of 3 or 4 fingers of my small hand. And this is going to form a kind of wedge across the back. So you're going to lie down on this, and it's going to go long ways, like I'm showing just now, and it's going to be down at roughly the bottom of your shoulders. So I've paused the video just for a second to show you how to come out of the pose before we get to the end of the pose, and I'm showing you for the first time. So it's just me not recording this completely correctly. So when you're in this posture, this Matsyasana or fish pose, we're going to be down roughly like this when we come into it, but you might be using the cushion to come out of this posture. Decide if you're going to be going to the left or to the right. I'm going to roll to my right, so I'm going to bring my left knee up towards the body, and I'm going to roll off to this side and lie here for a minute. This is our counter pose, maybe curling the knees in, making yourself into a little ball, or we call this embryo shape. So you decide if you're going to go to the left or the right. We don't want to be forcing ourselves up. That's really the kind of counterproductive to Yin itself. So from this lying back position, we bend a knee and we roll to the opposite side. And we lie there for about a minute. So you'll see it, I'll talk about it at the end of the pose as well, but I just wanted to include it at the start. So we hold it there, we come down into a lying position, maybe the knees are bent. We try and find where that needs to be. A little bit of jiggery pokery, he says. So finding that perfect position and then seeing if you can lie over it, bringing the head to the floor. If you need to, if that's too much of a curve into the back, bring your pillow or cushion and let your head come down. Extend through the legs. Arms can stay at your side body. They could come onto the rib cage in the belly. This can help with protection because we're kind of exposed here. We're exposing our heart, or we're opening our heart out to the universe. So it can feel like we're exposing. So we maybe want to hold on to ourselves. The final option is to take the hands up and over, reaching them away. And you will really start to kind of feel something here. So remember the first principle of Yin, we want to be in the position or take it to an appropriate depth where we feel something. this is your first time doing this pose, we're only going to be here for 2 to 3 minutes. If your arms won't go overhead or your shoulders won't allow this to happen, just keep your arms down by your side. Again, you could close your eyes. And the second principle of Yin Yoga is appropriate time. So in order for Yin Yoga to take effect, we need to be in the postures or the poses or the holds, however you wish to call them, for an appropriate amount of time. So some of the tougher ones, maybe it's a minute, and then we have movement. For most though, it's generally a beginner rule of about 3 minutes maximum. Again, we just come back to that breath. The inhale and exhale, the ebb and flow. You might find that when you've been here for a minute, actually you don't need the cushion anymore. Maybe you can allow the head to come to the floor. You'll notice my elbows don't touch because I'm a bit tighter through the shoulders, but if I take my arms wide, I can allow the arms or hands and forearms to touch the earth. So this is where some of that silent meditation or that feeling of a silent meditation comes into play. So again, as we come to the end of the first 3 minutes, if you're finding this really comfortable or this is not the first time you're doing this video and you want to stay longer, then you can. If, however, you're deciding to come out of the pose, we're going to come to how we get out of the pose. So I'm going to roll to my right. So I said at the start of the video to bend the opposite knee from the side you want to roll to. And then we roll off the blanket. Maybe pushing it to one side, curling into a little ball, and just allow the spine to round. So as we curl into this little ball, the spine pushes away behind in embryo. You might be on the left side or the right side, but just hold here. Three more breaths. And then reach behind to grab hold of your prop, which was the rolled up blanket, and roll back around onto your back. So we did Matsyasana or fish pose. We're now going to come to supported bridge. So the same rolled up blanket, pushing into the feet. We're going to lift the bottom of the back off the floor for just a moment. And we're going to take that rolled up blanket and you're placing it. In fact, let me just come up towards sitting for a moment. So you can come up to a seated position if you would like to. So we're going to be placing it around about here. So at the bottom of your back, we have our pelvis. So our pelvis starts here, but we have a iliac joint, so either side of the pelvis, and then the hip joint itself where the leg joins into the pelvis. We have our iliac joint, so that kind of big curvy bit, and we have our sacral joint or our sacrum. So that's the joining part from the spine to the pelvis to the tailbone, which kind of comes underneath your actual bum. Feels funny speaking to the wall here. But we're going to place our support at the sacrum. So it's at this kind of flat part of the bone at the lower part of the back. For me, it's roughly here. Today I'm using just a rolled up blanket, so it gives me more support and it's not too high. But you can use blocks or books if you want to get a little bit more height. But we're not going to take it too high today. So coming back onto the floor, lifting up, so push into the feet, lift up the pelvis, and then take your back down onto this block. So we're creating a little bit of a curve here, or a tilt through the pelvis. Try maybe extending with one leg. See how that feels. Maybe you can extend with both legs, taking the feet maybe a little wider. If this doesn't feel comfortable, bring the feet back. Adjust with your support, bringing the feet back down. Again, you could take the hands overhead. We can close the eyes here if we want to. And again, we're creating an extension through the spine, but this time at a different point. And again, as we're here, we'll talk about the third principle of Yin. So we've talked about appropriate depth, appropriate time or sufficient time, and then stillness. So finding stillness is the third principle. So if you're fidgeting and moving and unable to find stillness, then we're not quite finding the posture correctly. We've either gone too deep, or we're trying to make our body stay in a position that's uncomfortable or too uncomfortable. And this is where props come in handy. Maybe not extending through both legs, but we want to find stillness. So we find appropriate time, we find an appropriate depth for a certain amount of time, and we hold it with stillness. This is what works into the yin tissues. So noticing here in this pose, in this supported bridge, where you can feel it. What do those feelings feel like for you? Everybody's different. Like I said, if anyone looked in on you doing Yin Yoga, it really does look like we're doing very little. But that's just because we're working into areas that don't want lots of movement. They want stillness and stress or pressure, just a little. The same with each of the other poses. We don't rush out of the posture or the pose. We think about how we're going to transition out of it. So if your legs are extended, we bring both of the legs back in towards the body. We push into the feet and we lift up our lower back or pelvis, taking the cushion out of the way, moving it to one side, bringing the back down, and then gently hugging the knees in towards the chest. Maybe just slightly rocking side to side. You can lift your head and shoulders if you want to tuck yourself into a little ball and rock here. And then the head and shoulders come down. Let's draw a couple of circles with the knees in one direction. And then take it in the other direction. And then roll or rock yourself to the left or the right, lifting yourself back up. Maybe coming back to what is a comfortable cross-legged or sitting position for you. And then that's us. So 3 postures or 3 yin poses that you can do at any time. They're a kind of favourite of mine. Generally, I do a yin yoga class every Sunday after we do our class from 7 o'clock till 8 o'clock. And because I work on a computer a lot, and I'm kind of hunched over, that fish pose with the support between the shoulder blades can be really nice as a nice kind of alternative or counter pose to life, really, if you're spending a lot of time on a computer. My final bit to say would be for the supported bridge pose. If you try this a few times with the block and you want a bit more feeling, take your blanket, wrap it over a book or a block so you get a little bit more height. Come into that same position on your back, lift up, take this under, finding the sacrum, maybe extend one leg, maybe extend the other, hands at the side or hands overhead. This will give you more feeling, but it shouldn't be too intense. Always, if you can, put a blanket or a towel over the block or the book that you use. It gives more comfort, better support. A block itself can be a bit uncomfortable. Well, it is for me anyway. It can be a bit uncomfortable. So I always wrap everything in a block or in a towel or a blanket. And again, when you come out, we lift up, move to one side and rock into the back. So thank you for joining me on Friday for your weekly class or for your weekly video, and I'll see you on Sunday. Thank you very much.